like super glittery, ridiculous, all sequin.
Just crazy costume stuff.
Yeah. And my sister and I were like kind of early adopter fashionistas in the 90s. We had our grunge style, but we also had like, you know, the whole like whatever Marc Jacobs look and like really wild punk rock looks all through high school. And we made a lot of our own clothes. And we were really inspired by movies like the first Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
Yeah. She had these like white Doc Martens that we had never seen in the mall before, and we were so envious. And then Clueless, right, where they're all just about like
which
shopping.
was not on here, I don't think.
Okay, because it's, you know, kind of forgettable. The story's kind of dumb. It's got a
remember it
romance,
being
and
a
the
big
romance is
thing,
between
though.
Alicia Silverstone and her stepbrother.
Yeah, which is kind of yeah. Well, but it's supposed to be. Is it what Jane Austen is it supposed to be? Is it supposed to be Sense and Sensibility?
Is it really? I don't remember that.
It's
Perhaps
95 that came out. It was.
Did she get with her stepbrother in Sense and Sensibility? I don't seem to remember that.
I've never read a single word of Jane Austen. So
Well, that's a shame, Jared.
I'm not super upset about it.
We could talk some Northanger Abbey.
Trivia. Let's see.
We could talk some serious Emma, which I think was also a movie that came out in the 90s. Am I right?
With Gwyneth Paltrow. Was that Gwyneth Paltrow?
Yeah.
Was that also the 90s?
Wasn't it? Let me look.
Who knows?
Romeo and Juliet.
That was on the list.
That better be on the list. That has like a most
I think
amazing...
number 100.
Well, why would they put it all the way down there? It has an incredible soundtrack. That's lunacy.
There are some things that I thought it was a little over stylized for me. It was a little much, I guess. I liked that they kept the Shakespearean and just modernized the actual action.
Well, let me tell you that teenage girls of the 90s love Romeo and Juliet.
I remember.
Yeah, that's like...
I remember that being a huge thing. I remember, Titanic
and Emma was 1996.
Was it? Titanic was huge, and I wasn't a big fan of that either. I've just never been a big fan of Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh,
He
okay.
irritates me.
Okay, well, you weren't a teenage girl in the 90s.
This is true. I was
Didn't
not.
have a huge crush on Leo.
No, I probably the only thing that's changed between 90s me and today me, other than, decades, is...
There have been a couple.
Yeah, I'm probably thinner now, and then I am slightly more social.
Just
a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've become a lot extroverted, but I still identify as an introvert.
Really?
Yeah, I retook the Myers-Briggs, and your scores can change, right? Like people change.
Well,
yeah,
I don't know.
It says that I'm extroverted, but I don't really believe that. But then again, I don't know. Anyway, does that connect with any psychological thrillers? Silence of the Lambs?
Silence of the Lambs was in there. I didn't notice a single Harrison Ford movie in there.
But didn't The Fugitive come out in the 90s?
Yeah, but it wasn't on the list.
That movie's incredible.
I liked that one a lot.
If it's ever on cable or reruns, I will watch the whole thing.
I honestly, I like Harrison Ford. He's one of my favorites from...
Isn't
growing
Tommy
up with
Lee
Star
Jones
Wars.
the good cop
He's the one that does that film for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he makes that film for me. So...
That movie's incredible. How did it not make this list? This list is dumb.
This list is dumb.
Speaking of Tommy Lee Jones, okay, so you know how, like, the last decade, a lot of entertainment was focused around zombies?
Yes.
There's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And then...
It still is.
I feel like right before that, there was a whole fad with vampires. But go back to the 90s, there was a whole thing with aliens. There were a bunch of movies that came out with alien attacks, like Independence Day.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that iconic scene where the White House gets blasted by the giant spaceship?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
And The Fifth Element.
Fifth Element, yeah.
Okay. And a couple cheesy ones, but I remember these because my high school boyfriend worked at the movie theater, so we often got to see screeners before they were open to the public, and we watched Mars Attacks.
Oh yeah.
And I hated it. I thought it
Really?
was so stupid, but all my guy friends loved that movie.
I thought it was fun. It's not. I think that's another one that's aged into like a cult classic kind of thing. Because for a Tim Burton movie, it did not do well.
It's Tim Burton?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I didn't know that.
But the cast in that is insane.
I don't want to rewatch it, but I could see it playing again at Film Bar.
Yeah,
or having
I would
a
go
screening.
watch that if it was there. I just saw it's not a '90s movie, but Mystery Men is playing there, and I really like that one.
Oh, that's a good one. That'd be worth going back to. Also, the Men in Black franchise.
Did that start in the '90s?
Yeah.
Though it did. I guess the first one
must
came
have.
out in. That's one that goes a long time between sequels.
Mm-hmm.
The new one looks pretty interesting. Men in Black '97.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also didn't make the list.
That's how I got on this thread, because I was thinking of Tommy Lee Jones.
Let me see if I can find. He was in a ton of stuff in the '90s.
He was very active.
None of the perhaps questionable 90s Batman movies made it in there.
Nah.
I really
Those
like
can be
Batman Returns,
forgotten.
though.
That one's okay.
I probably most for Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman in that one.
Yeah. She is a sexy Catwoman.
Yes.
I like the joke about, honey, I'm home. Oh, that's right. I'm not married.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I do that all the time. I announce to my cat. Now.
Yeah.
Misha, I'm home. She comes running out. I'm like, oh, at least somebody's happy to see me. Jeez.
Yeah, Susie greeted me at the door today, speaking of.
Aw.
Which is unusual. Cats don't usually do the door greeting.
Scream. We screened Scream
was on there.
in the Three Fountains movie theater across the street from Fiesta Mall. And that is the first movie in which I actually screamed out loud.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. The opening scene was horrifying to me, where Drew Barrymore gets gutted. I rewatched that movie and I realized the DVD release, they toned down that opening scene.
Oh, really?
It's not what I remember, unless
think
my
I've seen it
brain
since
tricks
then.
me. But it was horrible. She's
Yeah.
just like ripped open, hanging from the tree, and her parents roll up, and that's how they find her. And I screamed.
I pulled up the Rotten Tomatoes list to see if there was anything
What was that parody series that came after Scream? Scary Movie.
scary. Yeah,
Did that also happen in the 90s, or was that after?
probably.
We're just blurting out a long list of movies, huh?
We are. I mean, when you were thinking about this, Scary Movie, the first one came out in 2000.
Okay. But Scream was like late 90s.
96, yeah.
And then the sequel came out in the 90s. And what's the name of the guy that was involved with Courtney Cox?
Oh, David Arquette.
David Arquette.
Mm-hmm.
What's he doing these days?
He does wrestling.
What?
Yeah, like he'll
Like
do
as an
acting,
announcer?
and then as
He's a wrestler?
Yeah, he's a huge
Whoa.
fan of like I think it might actually be like more MMA style stuff, like serious.
Whoa, I find that shocking. I always thought that dude was such a big nerd.
Yeah. Well, I think he is. Yeah, David Arquette MMA. There we go.
He's one of the Arquettes.
Yes. Apparently, Susie decided she's going to clean herself right now.
Very loud. Can you hear that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can hear it on headphones because I'm not wearing them. But yeah, he mixed martial arts stuff.
Wow.
Yep. And
Good.
other
Well, add some
wrestling
character
type
to his
stuff.
face. I always thought he was a little too vanilla.
Well, that's how Mickey Rourke got all fucked up. Was doing I think it was boxing.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah, as he had some unfortunate plastic surgery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking like who the big or what the big movies were for me in the 90s. And I mean, definitely The Big Lebowski was. Basically,
Good call.
The Coen brothers in general.
Good call.
Because their films of the 90s were Barton Fink.
That movie's great.
Fargo.
Yep.
What else came out? Let me see. Because they had just
It's
a
like
ton of stuff. They had
that.
Hudsucker Proxy, which I think is hugely underrated in their catalog.
That block that they did in the 90s are movies that you can revisit time and time again, and they never get old.
So starting with 1990, they had Miller's Crossing, Barton Fink, The Hudsucker Proxy, Fargo, and The Big Lebowski all came out
Impressive.
in the 90s. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, they had a really good run. I mean, and that was heading off of Raising Arizona came out in 87. So off of that and into...
Good call. They were quite active.
Yeah. I mean, the filmmakers for that, Richard Linklater was definitely... Did you see any of those that trilogy of films that he did with Julie Delpy, which was Before Sunrise? Was it Before Sunrise?
Oh, Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think After Sunset was one of them. And then...
I did see the first one.
Something.
I remember liking it. It's sweet.
I really like those a lot.
They spend a lot of time getting to know each other, so it becomes more than just a romantic comedy. It's not a comedy, really.
Right. No. Well, and it's what and Linklater was kind of big in the 90s for me as a filmmaker as well, with those films, and then stuff like Waking Life. And of course, Dazed and Confused. I've always liked his more philosophical stuff.
Yeah.
And
I do like Waking Life a lot. I remember having a conversation with someone who was like, I can't get past the animation.
See, and I love the fluid.
I like the style. I think it's cool.
Yeah. I agree. I like that.
Like my sister says.
That came out in 2001. So his 90s movies were Slacker, Dazed and Confused, Before Sunrise, Suburbia, which I never saw. I don't even remember that one. Oh, The Newton Boys.
That's I don't really like Suburbia. It's not that strong, but my sister always says she likes books and movies that make her think. And Waking Life is definitely one that makes you think.
It is, but that'll have to be a 2000s discussion.
Okay. You want to do another one? I guess we could.
Maybe not necessarily the next one, but
we'll give it some time.
Yeah. Like who were you at that point?
Yeah, I have a
really getting into like
list.
Yeah? Okay. I mean, this was where I had already had some strong feelings about filmmakers, which was kind of unique at my age at the time, because a lot of my friends had just they were all just watching blockbuster stuff and things that were coming out at that time. And I had been raised on classic film, and I knew who, a lot of the vaunted whatever filmmakers were. So I had that going in. And then, so these guys were more on my radar in the 90s of wanting to watch, to go to Camel View to get to see the new Coen Brothers film, or to go see a Wes Anderson was starting then too, and then Paul Thomas Anderson. Like
I mentioned, I had this handful of friends that all worked at the Three Fountains movie theater. Like seriously, my best friend Michelle, and then the guy she was dating, Andrew, and then my boyfriend Josh. They were all working. Other friends came in and out of that place too. And I think that's when the late 90s is when I was like, oh, I could start to identify films by their director. Like, oh, that's a Scorsese, right?
Yeah.
I read a book about Alfred Hitchcock. I got really into him for a while. But there's also, they're kind of one-offs, and don't ask me who directed any of these, but there's like a handful of very girl-defining movies that I remember being very into. Like, for example, Tank Girl.
Oh, yeah.
My sister had a bunch of the comics, and she also kind of collected Sailor Moon, and we'd hang out at the comic store a little. And Lori Petty is in Tank Girl. Also, a very young and dark-haired Naomi Watt plays her sidekick, which I rewatched it recently and was like, holy crap, is that who I think it is? Because I don't recognize her as a brunette. So that must be one of her early like Hollywood breaks, to be
Yeah.
honest. But we loved that movie because, again, it's like got the punk rock fashion.